that the border is there at all.
The Deputy Premier wants the permit system overhauled so farmers and other workers can travel more freely. He was in Albury today, swinging his attention from the northern border, which he's been demanding Queensland relax.
I can't be a hypocrite here to lecture one Premier if we're not prepared to look at lifting restrictions and see building some flexibility. That's what I'm here today to talk about.
The Federal Health Minister joined calls for Anastasia Palaszczuk to let people enter Queensland for medical treatment.
To allow them to travel is absolutely part of our common humanity, our common decency and our sense of Australianness.
The Queensland Premier says she'll cooperate where she can, but the border won't come down while there's community spread in New South Wales. There are 5 new cases of coronavirus in the state, all of them in Sydney. 3 were locally acquired and 1 has no known source. But none is linked to an infected security guard who worked at the Marriott Police Hotel, Flemington Markets and Parramatta Court. James Carmody, ABC News, Sydney.
Federal politicians will be able to contribute to parliamentary proceedings remotely for the next sitting fortnight. New rules have been agreed to that will allow MPs to participate in debates and question time via video link for the first time, but they won't be allowed to vote. Jane Norman joins us now from Canberra. Jane, how exactly will this work?
Yeah, well, Karina, Federal Parliament has been forced to adapt to these COVID-19 conditions. Basically, a whole bunch of MPs won't be attending Parliament in person in Canberra next week. For the Victorians, they had to decide whether they were able to self-quarantine for the 2 weeks leading up to Parliament. For Queenslanders, they have to self-quarantine for the 2 weeks afterwards. So a month away from their homes was a very big ask for many MPs. So we're expecting about half the usual number to actually travel to Canberra. But it meant a whole bunch of MPs would actually be missing out on parliamentary proceedings. So, as you mentioned, for the first time, the two parties have settled on new rules that will allow MPs to join remotely via video link to participate in parliamentary debates and question time. And as you say, they won't be able to vote. Their votes will be registered through an agreed pairing process. This is a first. They're actually running some technical run-throughs as we speak now. Of course, the big test is going to be on Monday when this, big experiment is actually put to the test. But for those MPs who can't physically be in Canberra for the sittings because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they have been given access to official parliamentary video facilities, we assume for security reasons, and they'll be able to beam in from their electorate offices or parliamentary offices. So we won't have a situation where they'll be in their living room or their kitchen. There is, some security around this new arrangement.
Now, Jane, a senior Labor frontbencher, he's been criticised by some of his colleagues for warning the party might split.
Yeah, Joel Fitzgibbon is a veteran right-winger from New South Wales. He represents the coal-rich country of Hunter Valley. And last year, he suffered the fright of his life, really, when he suffered a massive swing against him. One Nation nearly won the seat. And so for Joel Fitzgibbon, the threat of these minor parties, populist parties, stealing votes from Labor is very, very real. Now, he believes that the Labor Party has become too progressive. Its policies have moved too far to the left. So he is being very vocal in his campaign to shift the party back to where he says is the centre. And right now there is a big debate going on within the Labor Party over climate policies in particular. Last year, the party took to the election a commitment to reduce emissions by 45% by 2030. That's been dumped, but a new target hasn't been set. So this is Joel Fitzgibbon, putting his concerns on the record about the level of Labor's ambition. And really, this isn't a new issue. The challenge the Labor Party faces representing voters on the progressive side and the voters on the blue-collar side. And in the Labor Party's own election review last year, it found that low-income workers swung against Labor, that Labor's ambiguous language on the Adani coal mine, combined with some anti-coal rhetoric, devastated its support in the coal mining communities of regional Queensland and the Hunter Valley that Joel Fitzgibbon represents. So here is his intervention in that debate today.
And I'm just old enough to remember when politicians were able to say one thing on one side of the continent and another thing on the other and get away with it. But that's not possible these days. So Labor needs to develop a middle ground message for a broad and diverse community in order to win government.
So Jane, take us through the responses from some of his colleagues.
Yeah, well, his contribution caused a bit of a stir on social media. Many of his left faction colleagues had something to say. Former Deputy Leader Tanya Plibersek, who's from the New South Wales left, talked about the fact that her father was a plumber who taught her to love the Australian bush, so obviously an environmentalist, and she said it's an insult to suggest working people don't care about preserving our beautiful country. Victorian Labor MP Jo Ryan also chimed in. She said, I'm Labor in her words because working Australians don't just wear an akubra or a high-vis to work. So clearly a bit of a jab at Joel Fitzgibbon there. But as I mentioned, these are some issues that have been bubbling away in the Labor Party for some time. How to sort of reconcile the broad support bases from sort of really different sections of the community, from the inner Melbourne electorates up to the regional Queensland electorates. But they are big questions that Labor needs to solve pretty quickly, Karina, because we could go to election as early as next August.
Okay, Jane Norman reporting from Canberra. Tourism Central Australia has warned the industry is on life support and more businesses in the sector will close over the summer. In Uluru, tourism numbers are at record lows, forcing operators to downsize or even shut their doors. With the NT election just 2 days away, major parties have been outlining their tourism and economic policies. Ben Lanyon is the lodge manager at Longitude 131, a resort near Uluru. He joins me now live. Ben Lanyon, thank you so much for your time. Gosh, that shot looks absolutely incredible. It's picture postcard perfect there, but you've been closed for months, haven't you?
Yeah, going on 6 months now. It's been an incredibly challenging time for the entire team and the community out here, but we still remain optimistic that we'll soon be opening the doors.
And so what was business like last year compared to this year, where you've managed to keep staff on through JobKeeper? Is that correct?
Many of our staff have been retained through JobKeeper, and we're doing our best to look after those that are not eligible. Occupancies for several years out here at Longitude 131 have been exceptional. Of course, we have relied heavily on international travellers for that, but we're just happy for Australians to come visit us soon.
When do you anticipate reopening?
Look, it's been a little bit backwards and forwards, I'm going to admit that, but we have an opening date of 30th of August, which is next Sunday, and we're putting the finishing touches on the lodge in anticipation of reopening.
How much support have you received apart from JobKeeper in the almost 6 months that you've been shut?
Look, I have to put a big shout out to Tourism Australia and Tourism NT and all the other regional tourism bodies. They have been tremendous in providing support to us and to, I think, all of tourism around Australia. We certainly need it, and I think that has really assisted in building confidence with domestic travellers and really encouraging them to come and visit us.
So once JobKeeper begins being tapered at the end of next month, is that going to have a direct impact on your business?
Sure, yes, it will have an impact, but we're hoping that with the easing of border restrictions that we will see a shift there and bookings will increase. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for travel, especially to some of these amazing parts of Australia, so we're ready and waiting.
What difference have the Northern Territory tourism vouchers, where the government has offered $200 for every $200 spent by NT residents there, made for maybe other tourism businesses that you know of?
Look, I think it was a fantastic initiative. I know it was very well received. Many stories there that have really sung praise to that initiative, and I think it's probably done a lot for many small business operators to keep their doors open, keep business moving.
The Northern Territory election is this Saturday. Is tourism an issue that people will be voting on?
Perhaps to a lesser extent. We've remained very optimistic that border restrictions will ease and we'll be able to get back into it. But but continuing in the media, some of the policies and things that have been said in media in recent weeks have really impacted the confidence in our guests in still wishing to travel, and that is having an impact. And so we do think politics is involved in that.
Yeah, so when you say those comments, are you referring to the Premier saying that the border to the NT could remain closed for 18 months?
Oh, it's had a huge impact on our bookings. Immediately after those comments, bookings were falling away, and there was much concern. So we are concerned that this doesn't help the situation, and we just look forward to getting back on track and opening the borders and getting flights back here and doing what we do best.
And what have other tourism operators in the region told you about how damaging those comments from the NT Chief Minister have been?
Look, no direct comments. I certainly know the impact of this whole pandemic has certainly impacted many small businesses here, with a few concerns and comments that small businesses will struggle to remain open. But I think we will carry on, and we'll get back to business as usual very soon.
Okay, it looks like a beautiful spot. Ben Lanyon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Russia's opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been poisoned, according to his press secretary. The report claims Mr. Navalny felt unwell after drinking his tea during a flight to Moscow. The spokesperson says the plane made an emergency landing before Mr. Navalny was taken to hospital, where he remains unconscious on a ventilator. The 44-year-old activist has long been an outspoken critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin. US Democrats have formally nominated Kamala Harris as Joe Biden's running mate for the November election on day 3 of the Democratic National Convention. Senator Harris is the first Black and Asian American woman to be nominated on a major party ticket. In her acceptance speech, she called it an awesome privilege to run alongside Mr. Biden. Let's take a quick look at tomorrow's weather in the capitals. Clear